You change the person, you change the plan, you change the promise, you change the environment, and somehow the same pain came back wearing a different face. That should tell you something. The problem is not always the circumstance. The problem is often the pattern. A lot of people keep calling it fate. They call it chemistry. They call it bad luck. They call it just who I am. But many times, it is none of those things. It is old code. It is a nervous system running a familiar script beneath conscious intention. And until that is diagnosed, you can keep changing the outside while the same suffering keeps rebuilding itself on the inside. This is why so many people feel trapped. They know better. They have read the books. They can quote the philosophy. They understand the red flags. They can explain the wound. And still, under pressure, they collapse into the same behavior. Why? Because insight is not the same as installation. Knowing is not the same as being able to execute under stress. The lesson may have reached the mind, but the nervous system never got the update. That is the fracture. And that is why so many people keep beating themselves up for failing lessons they actually understand. But the problem is not always that you forgot the lesson. The problem is that the lesson never became your default state under pressure. That is not shameful. That is diagnostic. And diagnosis is where the real work begins. This becomes especially dangerous in relationships, because a lot of what people call attraction is not attraction at all. It is activation. The body feels a familiar emotional pattern and mistakes that intensity for meaning. So chaos feels alive. Ambiguity feels magnetic. Inconsistency feels special. And peace feels strange. Not because peace is wrong, but because the body has been trained to trust activation more than calm. So when a regulated situation appears, many people do not relax. They scan, they brace, they question it, they wait for the drop. That is how old conditioning hides inside modern choices, and this is where the Stoic quotient, Stoicism 2.0, breaks from the old lane. The old lane taught restraint. Hold it in, control your judgments, stay composed, look disciplined, fine. But restraint is not the same as regulation. Restraint suppresses the reaction for a moment. Regulation changes the state beneath the reaction. And if the state never changes, the old pattern keeps waiting for its next opportunity. That is why so much Stoic content has produced articulate sufferers. People who sound wise, people who know the language, people who can explain Marcus Aurelius beautifully, and yet their body still panics, still chases, still folds, still fawns, still collapses when life applies pressure. That is not because Stoicism is false. It is because the delivery system has been incomplete. Real Stoicism was never meant to become aesthetic performance. It was meant to become inner government. Not admiration, installation, not sounding strong, becoming governed. That is why we say the pattern is not your personality. You are not broken. You are not doomed. And you are not condemned to repeat what your body has merely rehearsed well. But vague inspiration is not enough. More quotes are not enough. More explanation is not enough. You need diagnosis. If the same pattern has survived new faces, new promises, and new intentions, then the time for vague self-improvement is over. Stop calling it your type. Stop calling it fate. Stop calling it just who I am. See it clearly. Take the free nervous system audit. Do not let fear keep you from the diagnosis. The first act of Stoicism is not quoting Marcus Aurelius. It is having the courage to see yourself clearly. We'll identify the leak. You decide whether to step into the blueprint and repair it.